Well, I think for me, depends how far back you go, but I think as far as watching stuff being sort of influenced by comedy, it would have been the Goodies. Yeah, I really remember the Goodies first, and then Monty Python after that. Now, of course, would have been repeats, I think, definitely of the Pythons, but of the Goodies, probably repeats again. But that really made an impression on me because just the silly, surreal humour was, yeah, right up my alley. Now, at that same time, I would have been exposed to Spike Milligan through Bad Jelly the Witch, as we all were in New Zealand. And yeah, and I think as far as New Zealand, the first kind of New Zealand humour that would have come through for me in those early years, probably all at the same time, really. I remember Lynn of Tawa, the Top Twins, Fred Dagg and Billy T. James. For me, looking back, it seems like they were all around about the same time. I know they probably weren't, but definitely within a few years of each other, that kind of thing. McFarlane Gadsby coming at me. And already from those names I've mentioned is quite a difference in what they were doing, but there was definitely a similarity, and that was really, I guess, rural New Zealand, and so there wasn't too many. I mean, you could say McFarlane Gadsby with their political satire was certainly more city-based, but I think the real humour, and I think that's where we sort of got it from the beginning, was that we liked the British kind of style, we liked the silliness and the surrealness, but we're going to throw some serious gumboots in there and a bit of mud and some number 8 wire. That's what it feels like. Those are my early memories, yeah.
Are you, and when you're listening to this stuff, is it kind of, you're listening to this in suburban Auckland, is the rural stuff, is that kind of going, yeah, that's us, that's me, I love that?
Yeah, because I was brought up not in a rural setting. I was in Pakuranga and we were, I guess, kind of city-ish, although it was 45 minutes to get into town. So, and there wasn't, yeah, so that, you know, there wasn't, well, certainly wasn't concrete jungle, but, and I would drive out to Ardmore on Monday nights. I wouldn't, I was 12, but my mother would drive me out there, and, you know, within 10 minutes of leaving Pakuranga, you are in the fields, and paddocks, because I was in the Air Training Corps. So straight away, now my memory's really starting to work now. Thinking about Mum, bless her soul, may she rest in peace. We were a bit of a comedy duo ourselves, Mum and I. We really loved watching British comedy on TV, and our favourite shows were Dad's Army. That was our number one, and I think as you'll hear me start to talk about, you know, how I ended up in the military. Well, it comes down to really my obsession with Dad's Army. I wanted to be an old man protecting New Zealand from the Nazis. Anyway, but yeah, so we watched anything of the BBC, really the David Croft comedies, which were Ain't Half Hot Mum, another military one. Open All Hours, not actually David Croft, but of course Ronnie Barker, the two Ronnies. So I could just mention all of them, but you know, it was essentially that kind of half-hour British sitcom. So that too was really, and you can tell from where I went with my comedy that it was that style, that kind of character-based, very silly dialogue. A little bit of slapstick here and there, and that really came into play with, you know, Rowan Atkinson's work and things like that. So there wasn't a lot of that in New Zealand. There wasn't too much slapstick. There was definitely a lot of guitar play and a lot of There was some certainly impersonation, which I never really ended up doing. But we were very good. We are still very good at that, and you can see that with McPhail Gadsby and the Top Twins. And although they are more characters, and I think I probably was influenced by them actually with the idea of, and I'm just rattling on now, but I have had half a coffee. I better not have the rest of it. But you're getting a lot of this. So was that I felt, and I'll say this while it's in my head, watching Monty Python for me, not really having a dad around because it was just mum and I. Parents were separated, then they got divorced. Dad was never with me at all growing up. I would see him on occasion. I'd go and stay at his place. But for the most part, no dad. I felt like they were my dads. So I really adored each and every one of the Pythons, and I was obsessed with every single thing they did. So I watched it and still do. It's still my happy place. And so I think when I became a comedian, I wanted to be in a sketch troupe. I wanted to be in a group. Now the hard part was finding other members. So I decided to, for the most part, be those other members as well. And I think that's why when my stand-up, you can see that I'm being other characters and I'm being other characters talking to each other. So I ended up playing out sketches with myself. Now, of course, I was in a comedy duo at the beginning with Grant Lobbin, and I was going to say, God rest his soul, but he is still alive. I just don't see him anymore. I do, I see him all the time. But he and I, so we did sketch, but we also, because he could play the bass guitar, he knew a couple of chords, we were able to play some smashing music alongside that as well. But really, I think our key was the surreal sketch element. We were creating things that were certainly odd. And so you'd go, oh, this is funny because it makes no sense. So we tried to have that kind of as our genre. And so maybe we were ahead of our time. I don't know.
Bad Jelly of the Witch, isn't it fascinating how it comes up?
Yeah.
Do you know it's only in print in this country?
Really?
You can't buy it in England, but if you walk into Unity Books, they'll go, oh yeah, and there's a stack. They go, yeah, here we are.
Still, because he handwrote that himself and did all the drawings. There was an inspiration for me with my book. Is that, I loved the idea that when you not only use the story, because we grew up listening to him say the story, do all the voices, and it was just, how can one man create such a cool story and then make it come to life like that? And then in the book, it would made it even more special because the drawings. I can imagine him drawing it, and the drawings weren't fantastic, but they were spikes, and so it was kind of like, wow.
Are you at school? Are you performing? Are you a performing kid? Do you perform on the playground? Do you do amateur theatre at this stage?
So I think at school, I was slightly odd. I tried to listen, but I think my attention span wasn't great, undiagnosed, but certainly because it was the 80s. But I would draw. I would draw little comic strips, and my friends would actually nudge me and get me to draw them. Hey, have you got the latest Sam in Vietnam? It was one of my favourites, about this character called Sam, and he was in Vietnam. The war had ended, but he was still running around with a gun. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So I would sort of draw this little thing, and I would, while I was in class, while I was supposed to be listening, I would be drawing these cartoons, and this continued on from high school into my army life, and I continued to draw cartoons at the back of class, if you will, in the army, when we had these lectures on, tactics and whatnot. I'd be at the back drawing, because I'd had another army mate who would nudge me and say, oh, can you do those cartoons? And these ones were actually about him, and they mocked him wildly, but he loved it. So I would do that. So I think comedy for me has always been more than just telling jokes. It's been a sort of an embodiment of how you're living, And so therefore, it could be the way you look, the way you walk, what you're drawing, and what your opinions are. And so when someone comes up, oh, give us a joke, more often than not, I don't really have one. But I sort of, comedy for me is sort of like a way of life rather than just a piece of writing.
So are you performing on stage?
Yes, definitely. And going back to school, I never really performed much at school. In fact, I was only in my later years, I was in one school play called The Boyfriend, and I think it was in my final year of school. And I was just sort of in the chorus, if you will. I think my character was Alphonse, and I was just one of the side dancers. And I might have had one line, like, I'm coming to the event too, or something, but then the rest of it was just me doing the Charleston. But on my final night, and then when like for however many nights, 3 nights, we performed that, and on the final night, and this is where I think I sort of really started to become a performer, was I went out to the audience, and it was the final night, and people they were throwing flowers up, probably for the main stars, and I came up and excuse me, everyone, I just want to announce this is my final night, and everyone knew it was the final night of the show, and I'm just one of the side dancers, but no, it's my final night on stage, and indeed at this school. I made this announcement, and Mum was in the audience. Oh, what's he saying? And I said, I'm going to join the army, and I have been accepted, and I love you all, but I must go to Wauru. And then there was a big applause. So that was the first time I kind of realized, I can command, certainly not an army, but an audience. And so that's what I did. And I think, it just so happened to I joined up at the exact wrong moment. What I should have done is gone into some sort of performance school or a drama thing, but I joined the military. And I think from that moment onward, I'd caught the bug, if you will, of performance. And so then as a young soldier of 17, because I was in this cadet school, I then just would perform, and I would do impressions of the non-commissioned officers, and I'd do the, I'd amuse the other cadets, and I got into trouble a lot for it, because they would come up and say, who are you doing an impression of there? Sounds like me. And I'd go, it is you. And right, that's it, you're in trouble. Oh, am I? Why do you always talk like that? And it was sort of like this. And so everyone would laugh. So I really felt, and I'd been laughed at all my life, but I never felt like, I just felt it was a natural thing, and I would get a proper job. A soldier, anyway, that's what I ended up thinking was what I was going to be. I was going to be an officer. I was going to command an army. I was going to rescue POWs from the Third World War, which never happened, thankfully. But I had all these visions. But really what it was, as I realized 3 years into my military career, I was actually wishing to be the actor playing a soldier, not being the actual soldier. Because, and I should have known from the first day when I got my uniform, and I was in there trying my uniform on for the longest than any other soldier, because I kept putting the hats on and trying out all the different gear. And they go, Darby, you've got your kit, get out. And I said, can I have another look, please? And I'd be looking at it from the side and going, imagining myself marching. Oh, this looks good when I'm marching, get out. And so they should have actually hinted at that point, look, I think he's more in here for a theatrical reason.
So have you ever been tempted to be a reenactor? Like, bigger
yes,
reenacting groups.
And I have been tempted, and I'm excited about the prospect of maybe one day that happening. And I'm sort of waiting till, I feel like I've plateaued in my career now. So once I start to drop off the other end, I think, right, it's reenactment time.
World War II or Napoleonic? I mean, what's...
I love costumes. So yeah, definitely the further back you go would be more fascinating to me. The Boer Wars, which weren't a bore, by the way, is very exciting. And I think, like the red coats, that kind of stuff, but that's very British, and I don't know, I'd have to put on a voice. That'd be all right. But but I love World War II. I love the uniforms, I should say, not the war. I'm not a fan of the, mainly just the costumes. And some of the equipment. I do like tanks.
So you're in the army. What prompts you to leave?
I was going to say signalled there, ironically. I was in the signals. I was signalled from the back of the room, come here please. I remember it vividly, Sergeant Haywood, and he said, look, I want Lieutenant, your commanding officer wants to have a word with you. Riley, I think his name was, because I remember Riley, Ace of Spies. I always thought that was him, but it wasn't. So he'd bring me into his office, and he actually said, hey, look, you've been in 3 years now, and I'm thinking, I'm just watching you and Luke, who's the other guy, one of my army mates, and you and Brenda, the three of you, really, you sort of have a bit of fun, don't you? And your hair's a bit longer than it should be, and I caught you and Brenda actually holding hands when you were marching the other day. And he said, have you thought of other, I think you're doing well, but there are other career options. And he passed me a pamphlet for Canterbury University. And I thought the army was going to pay for me to go to uni. I'm thinking, I'm going to be an officer. And he said, no, I think you should, you don't. He didn't say we don't need you, but he sort of hinted at the idea that maybe army life wasn't for me. And up until that point, I hadn't even registered that it probably wasn't. So yeah, I got the bum's rush.
Sounds actually a bit like Murray from the Conchords.
It is, yeah. It's probably where I got a bit of that from, was that kind of sitting at the desk and I'm just going through some ideas, and are you happy here? So yeah, I felt, and I took a long time to grow up, so I was very late to mature. And at this point, of course, I'm 21 when I'm deciding that I might actually leave. And Luke and I left at the same time, and then we moved into town, into Christchurch, and I went straight into university there, and I found my true vocation straight away.
And what were you doing at university?
So I was doing art theory, which I got the degree in, but I didn't, sign up to go to university to do art theory. I think it was just on the list of things that you could do. Sociology, and philosophy, which I really enjoyed, and Antarctica studies, which was awful because I had to get up at 5 a.m. I think the lecture, why did they make it, was it 5 a.m.? Maybe the lecture was 6. Yeah, it was a 6 a.m. lecture, so I only went to the first 2, and then I just got a book out on, unfortunately, the book I got out was on the Arctic, not Antarctica, so failed that one. Just got the book out. I'll read the book. Are you seriously telling me anything that's not in the book here? Well, given that the book's Arctic, yes. Oh, okay.
So, but also so you start performing at university?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. So university for me, I was approached by Guy Roberts, who ran the comedy club at Canterbury University. And it was Clubs and Societies Day, and I'm wandering around, and he said, hey, come over here. And he didn't know me from a bar of soap. It must have been the way I was walking. Like I said to you, comedy's my life. I was probably doing something weird. And he said, come here, I think you should sign up for this. And it was the comedy club, and I said, well, I'm always being laughed at. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know what it was. Turns out we meet once a week. We write sketches for the Capping Review show. And it's a social gathering really for like-minded losers. And so I said, well, that's perfect. And that was the beginning really of everything. So I like to say that Guy Roberts did discover me, and his brother, Jono, and they together are known as the Roberts Brothers, and they were a comedy duo in Christchurch. And they were a rival comedy duo to Grant and I with Recently Granted. So there was the old comedy duo wars of what was it, 1997.
The comedy, the comedy scene in Christchurch, talk about that. So there's the stuff at university.
Yeah.
So what was the Capping Review like?
Yeah, so the Capping Review, so this was my first foray into comedy writing. And I'd never really done it before. I had just improvised all my comedy on the spot in social situations. I'd never written anything down. And so here we are now sitting together once a week and trying to write humorous sketches. And, they looked at some of the things I wrote, and it didn't make any sense to them, and it was weird. But I got a couple of sketches in. I mean, the main sketch I got in that they liked, and when I say they, I'm talking Guy. Chris Brain was one of the high-ranking officials on the comedy club, and there was a couple other chaps, and they looked at the only sketch they liked of mine was one called "Things Rhys Can Do," and it was about me coming out on stage in tights and doing some really crazy spaghetti leg dance moves to Kung Fu Fighting, the song, but it was the way that was written. And it actually just said, Rhys walks out on stage, and what they wanted to do was they wanted to get this guy, Hamish, who was one of the other the comedy club chaps. He ended up taking that, and it was written on a napkin, and he went on stage and he narrated the sketch from the piece of napkin as exactly how I wrote it, and then as he read it, I did what I said I was going to do on the napkin. So it was just so bizarre. But if you want to check it out, it's on YouTube, and it was a big hit that year. It was the biggest sketch. It was kind of the sort of thing you might see Rowan Atkinson do, I guess. The movements and just the weirdness of it. It was so simple and great, and then it was excitable. It was exciting for me because the second year I wrote a sequel to that sketch. And it was called More Things Rhys Can Do, and it wasn't as good. It was, but I did it. And then I wore these purple tights, and I think a lot of it came from the fact I had these purple tights, and I had these amazing legs, and I could really stick them in weird shapes and very high and do all these funny things. And I still, do things with my legs, but this is back in the day when they were pristine. Should have seen them, even in purple. And I remember after I think it was the year of the sequel, 96, let's say, More Things Rhys Can Do, which didn't go down as well, but I remember I still got a big applause. And then after that night, after that capping review, I, drunk off my own self-achievements, I went into town and entered myself into a wet boxers competition. And this this is in Christchurch, so they had, I think it was a wet t-shirt and wet boxers, so it was a male and female comp, and I thought, I'm going to win this. And so what I did is, when I got up on stage and they threw water on me, and I pulled down my pants, and I had my famous purple tights. I thought they were famous. Only some people had seen them at university. But I got there and I started doing my moves again, and I said, make sure you do Kung Fu Fighting, the song and everyone. I thought, I'm going to do, here's the third episode. But I didn't win, and I got minimal laughs. And I think mainly people were more into sort of the sexy there and they were drunk. And so I went for humour when I should have gone for hotness, and I think I got third.
It's a valuable lesson. Valuable lesson. It stood you well.
Drunk off my own comedy power.
And then how did you meet Grant?
So, in Christchurch, there was a theatre restaurant called Excalibur's, and it was the only one of its kind, and they advertised for character waiters. And I saw the ad in the paper, and I thought, well, I need a part-time job while I'm at uni, and this seems to be a bit of an acting thing, character waiters. So I went in there, and I got the job pretty much straight away, because the acting was minimal. It was really just waiters. Waiters dressed up as characters. My first character was Gorp, the village idiot, and I had a big wig, and it was sort of set in the, the Middle Ages. And anyway, Grant was a chef there, so he was in the kitchen, and pretty much the first night after doing my job and not doing much acting, mainly just pouring soup, after the show, I sat at the bar, and he, as did he, and we met each other, and we had a good laugh. We had a few drinks, and he told me he was the funny guy around here. And I said, oh, okay, well, looks like you've got some competition. And then we sort of connected, and we had another drink and another drink. and it was a bit like that drink-off in Raiders of the Lost Ark, you know. But it was more of a comedy off, because we would say funny things and make each other crack up, and we both realised we had the same sense of humour, and it was pretty much one for one, because we had the bar staff and that laughing, so it was who was the funniest, you know, and Grant was not happy that a new guy had turned up that was sort of going to steal his throne of being the funny guy. And in the end, and I think he'll attest to this, I won with some funny joke about a margarine sculpture, and he fell off his chair laughing. It was either that or the booze, but we decided from that moment we would start a comedy duo, and he said he had a guitar, and I think we went back to his place either that night or certainly the next night, and I said to him, well, I've got a couple of ideas for some songs. I didn't, but we made them up on the spot, and then, yeah, the rest is history. We called the duo Recently Granted, and then we perform on a regular basis in Christchurch to anyone that would watch us.
Is that where the green room comes in?
Yes.
Tell me about the green room.
So the green room opens up, and it's very exciting because it's a performance cafe, and this is just at the start of latte culture in Christchurch here. And also, we all watched the Mike Myers film, So I Married an Axe Murderer, and we all loved that kind of atmos. And now we've got a place in Christchurch with a stage, but you can also drink, but you can also have coffees and probably a panini if you're lucky. And so there we go, and it's opened up, and now once again, an advertisement, I believe, in the paper, performers wanted for new performance cafe. Oh, exciting! Here we go. And then became the auditions. So this was interesting because we had a comedy scene at Canterbury University. We had with the comedy club, so we were the only, as far as we know, the only comedians in town. Was this group of students. And now there was another outlet that wasn't just the Capron Review. There was a place in town where you could probably do comedy. So there was definitely interest amongst our group. And then the three women that ran the green room, the owners, they decided to sort of go out and have a look and see what talent was out there. And so it wasn't just comedy. Obviously, predominantly the place was music, poetry, spoken word, any form of art. Performance art. So they, I think we contacted them and said, would be keen to be part of your opening. It was for the opening night because they wanted to. They were getting acts for the opening night, and they said, all right, well, we'll come and see you. And where are you performing these days? And of course, we weren't performing anywhere. We'd done one or two gigs, you know, after the show at Excalibur's to our bar mates, but that was about it. But we found a place in Littleton called the Wunderbar, and we called them up and said, could we come and do a performance there? And we hadn't really done many, and they said, yes, please come. So there's so fond memories of this because Grant had a motorbike, and he had an amp, a big hand-painted purple again, our lucky colour, purple painted amp, and he had a bass guitar, and I didn't have any transport, so I would get on the back of his motorbike and I'd hold the bass and this huge amp, and we had two helmets, luckily, and we'd ride like Dumb and Dumber, honestly, from Christchurch out to Littleton, through the big tunnel, you know, in the dark, and I thought he was cool, you know, Grant probably had the leather jacket on, looking back it might have been vinyl. But anyway, we were riding out there, and we arrived at this venue, and we rocked on inside, and the three women were there, the green room judges, owners, I should say. And so we jumped up on stage and we did our performance. We did our couple of surreal songs and some even more surreal sketches. And I found out later, Rosie, who I ended up marrying, long story, but she was one of the owners of the green room. She said to me, well, we liked the other guy. You didn't seem to have any talent. But Grant made us laugh without even doing anything. And so I said, well, all right, well, you know, it's a package deal. You want him, you got me. So anyway, off we go, and we're accepted, and we performed on opening night. And then from that moment, comedy became a regular installment at this green room. And in fact, we had our own comedy night. And so it was up to myself and a few others from the university decided to put together a troupe that was sort of a branch of the comedy club, but it was the branch that would now perform in town. And so we called that group Four Fingers Missing. And that was our thumb, that was our symbol. And so, yeah, there was a wonderful group of, and it was 50-50 men and women, and 50-50 stand-ups and groups. So there was, there was probably three sort of group acts, and then three sort of solo. And I wasn't solo at that point, so I was with Grant, three solo performers, and one thing led to another, and comedy became the big night at the green room. And so it was shifted from like a Wednesday to a Saturday, and this is the same time as comedy was also making a shift nationally. So we had Mike King and Ewan Gilmore and Andrew Clay sort of touring, doing the first sort of stuff and that I remember. And I know that other groups toured before them or around about the same time, as you know, Facial DBX and things like that, and then Funny Business. But I'm getting hazy on dates around that time, but there was definitely a shift, a movement of live stand-up or sketch comedy in New Zealand, and so there was a little buzz happening. And I think so. I'm proud of the idea that we kind of represented the Christchurch version of that buzz. I didn't mean to be different. I performed comedy how I felt it naturally came out of me, and that was through movement and also sound effects. And I think growing up, being a bit of a loner, but playing very well on my own, being able to do little characterizations of voices and things with my action figures, playing, very playful, always been a very play-heavy kid, that I would do not only the funny voices for the different characters, but I would do all the sound effects of the vehicles, helicopters, sirens, guns, and I would do it all, and I'd create this world. I don't know where it came from in my head that I needed that, or maybe, but it worked out. And then so when I ended up performing as a solo act, all of that came back. And I'd never practiced. Like people think, oh, you must have a microphone at home and you're practicing all the, but no, it's just already there. And so when I heard for the first time, I can remember doing a helicopter and it being amplified with a microphone. I mean, and I'm blown away, going, this is great. This sounds like a helicopter, and people are like applauding and stuff. And then so I would just from then onwards, I would the stories I told, I would make sure there was doors opening and sirens or explosions, especially in those very early days. It was almost too much. And then later on, I would concentrate more on the actual writing of the story and rather than the sound effects.
Audiences at that time really lapped that up because it was clever.
Right.
People kind of thought, oh, he does this thing with his, he does this thing with his leg, or that sound effect is so good. Everyone's competing with overseas ideas of stand-up, but you're nailing it because you're doing this thing that immediately relates to audiences. What was the reaction of the early audiences to your stuff?
Good. I feel like it was always pretty good, but I'm so in the zone creating whatever I'm doing on stage that I'm almost not listening to whether they're laughing. You know what I mean? So there's one famous case when I finished a routine and half the people had gone and I hadn't noticed. Well, I enjoyed it, and I think that's the great spirit of it. But yeah, I was doing something different, and one of my fondest memories is the international comedians coming over. One of my fondest memories is the international comedians coming over and a couple of them coming up to me and saying, your act would work overseas. because you're not centric about any New Zealand ideas. You're talking about dinosaurs, jetpacks, mermaids. You're doing a lot of underwater sounds and weird movements with your legs. That you could do that anywhere. And I went, yeah. And I didn't even create it to be like that. It was just for someone who's very New Zealand. I didn't involve a lot of necessarily New Zealand stuff into my thing. It was more about humanity, about weirdness of humans. And so that's when I got the buzz of, up sticks and heading to the UK, was because I really felt that I could have an in there. There was a bit of a rivalry between two comedy duos in Christchurch, and they were certainly better than us. The Roberts brothers, they were handsome and they could really sing. But before I bring you to the big point I want to make, I'll add this aside. We had this one song called Jandals, which we made a music video of, and then 20 years later we even made another music video of it. We're still banging it out, but it's a catchy number, but it's pretty basic. And these guys, the Roberts brothers, would come on stage and they would do a cover of it, and they'd do this tremendous version of it, and it was really cool. And you could see it in Jono's eyes as he sung it beautifully, looking at me as if to say, "Now imagine if he had this much talent." I'm like, "Oh damn you! Oh yeah, well we're banging the owners." So we had that one over on them, and this eventually led to the end of the war, whereby I don't know how this happened. I bought or I found a banner. And I managed to put up a giant banner across the street, across Litchfield Street, from one building, from the green room, which was my bedroom window, above the green room, across the street to another building across there, and it said on it, the big banner, and I remember painting it, "Recently granted #1 comedy duo in town." And of course they turned up one night, because it was always fights as to who was going to headline. And they saw that banner, and it was like, "How dare you?" I said, "Cover that, you bastards!" Yeah.
Thank you for dispelling that Christchurch is not an incestuous place whatsoever.
No, not at all.
So you moved to Auckland?
Yes. This was the big move. University had finished. I managed to pull off a degree, got the certificate and ran. And so really, once again, it's all about timing, and this place had opened up. The Classic Comedy Club had just opened, and they were looking for staff, and they heard about Rosie, who of course I've brought up before. She owned the Green Room along with the other two ladies. She was offered a job here in Auckland, and so. Yeah, it was kind of like, okay, well, I've just finished uni. I would like to go home because that's where I'm from. Mum was up there waiting. So off we went. And ironically, it was the move basically because of her comedy career, not mine. So I, once we got up there, of course, knocked on the door of the club and said, "Oh, is there any chance of me having a go?" And so Scott put me on, and so here I was now on the stage of the premier club in the country.
You'd done pulp comedy. Your first TV
Yes.
Had happened while you were in Christchurch, weren't you? That was.
I think so, yeah. It may have been not till I got up here. Yeah, we all missed out on getting pulp comedy. I remember they came down and looked at us, and this was during the comedy duo wars. So we were not in our best space, I remember. And then as a solo, I don't think I got it either. And Mandy later regretted that, and at various functions where we'd yell at each other. But yeah, but I got it once I got up here, I think, and which was better. And she was obviously right. I truly wasn't quite ready. Once I'd stretched out more dialogue and story into my sound effect foray, then the TV was ready for me, and so that's what I did. And yeah, I'd left Grant. The duo was kaput, Rosie and I came up to Auckland together. She was running this venue. I believe she was the manager here.
At that time, do you start to figure out what TV wants? Like are you starting to think, I just want to do TV? Or are you starting to think, no, I just want to barrel ahead with my...
No, not at all. I think we were all excited that pulp comedy was a thing because it meant we were doing something special and we could even get on TV. And it was a shit fight to get on there. But and when I did get on, I was very proud, and I did my routine, and you can all check it out online. I think overall I probably did the show 2 or 3 times, I think, but it wasn't the be end all. I remember it was really important for me, as it is with any stand-up, I think, to really just hone the craft. And what it did do was it got you out there. The public went, oh, well, I like that guy, or I like that girl. These people are funny to me. But for me, I had my blinkers on. Once I was told I had universal appeal, it was just all about getting over to London for me. And now I was also in a group called the Brat Pack, which I don't know whether I came up with it or not. It might have been Jeremy Elwood, but we'll more about that later at the bar. But the idea, I remember basically the idea was, as young stand-ups, we would be stronger as a group. None of us are names yet, so how about if we gain strength and popularity by hanging out together, the 4 or 5 of us. There was subtle group changes through the years. I'll go into that later. But the core cast who started this thing, my idea was that let's and it's an obvious thing. I mean, you don't call yourself the Rat Pack or the Brat Pack. That's what people are supposed to call you. But I thought, let's just call ourselves that. Let's wear suits, drink martinis, hang out at the bar together, and be cool, and do comedy. And so, all right, it's a group. So we then, and also a part of it was the comedy festival was happening, and I'd already done 2 comedy festivals with Grant. We'd done the duo, recently Granted twice, and now I'm in Auckland on my own. I'm thinking, well, none of us really have an hour. Let's all do 15 minutes each, or 10 even, and then at the end, let's do an improv thing. And so that was basically the show. And Terry Frisbee was very important in this affair because he really manifested the tour, the New Zealand tour of this. So not only did we do the comedy festival in Auckland, Wellington, and I think Christchurch in those days too, we then continued on, and his brother and him really created a tour for us. So we did the whole of the South Island. So all of a sudden we're touring now. And we were the only stand-ups really that I knew of at that point that were touring New Zealand. Certainly of the young bucks, or the Brat Pack as we actually were called. Our tagline was young, hip and hilarious. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Oh, still proud of that. So this was also around about the time that I came into some money. My nana passed away, and lo and behold, I don't know whether I should tell people, I don't know what my siblings got, but I got, and I hope they're not watching this, I got $5,000. I don't know what you guys got, talking to my siblings there, but for me, and luckily Rosie now, we're such the team, her and I, that she said, right, well financially, what are we going to do with this? Number one thing I think was get a bed. We bought a good, decent bed. And the second thing, and I think this was my influence, I said, well, look, the Brat Pack need a Mercedes. So I spent the rest of it on a 1980s 280e orange Mercedes, and it was a beauty. And so now, not only did we have the suits, the martinis, and the odd joke, we had a car to get around in. So this was, we're young and cool, and we had this Mercedes, and I had it for a number of years. Ended up selling it to Gish in the end, and I think he drove it off a cliff. But we had it for a number of years, and it slowly got worse and worse, and I didn't know anything about cars, so I couldn't fix it. But at the start there, wow, what a cool, and we used to park it out the front here, and oh, those were the glory days. And yet still, none of us, particularly me, although we would take turns to headline and stuff, we all thought we were pretty funny, but looking back, none of us were great. And that's the thing with comedy, it just grows and gets better and better. It's such an organic thing. But if you've got the confidence from the beginning to think that you're great, that's such a good start, because if you don't even have that, you're never gonna get it.
And it's so much easier in a group.
Yes. Yeah.
To that kind of and that's what you've been searching for, haven't you?
Yeah.
That self-justifying, self-deluding, but great bunch of people to hang out with.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess in a way I did find my group. Now at the end of each show that we did an improvised piece, because we could all sort of improvise. Chris in particular was really a good improviser. And Jeremy always had the guitar and was capable of coming up with any great song right off the cuff. And then there's me with the spaghetti legs. So there's something there, and I really enjoyed that part of it, because the rest of it really was just mini solo bits. But I liked hanging out as the group, and I kind of maybe you're right, and maybe I kind of for a while there I did feel like I had my Python Beetle kind of group. But that was short-lived.
So what's the decision to go to England?
So for me, it was just pure ambition, and that was actually Terry Frisbee again. I tell you, I mean, he must have had some ambition for comedy really back then, because it was his idea that the Brat Pack should do Edinburgh. And so that's how I first got over there. And I was, in the back of my head, I'm excited about the idea that, my comedy had Universal. This in my head. Those British comics would tell me, "Oh, you're going to make it in Britain if you bring your stuff over." And how much is it to get over there? Oh, that's never going to happen. And I had nothing. I had no money. And then how did it work out? Well, Rosie again, she got the job. So her comedy career, once again taking off way stronger than mine, was asked to be a venue manager in the Edinburgh Festival for the Gilded Balloon. So she was able to go over there, and thanks to her and her parents and a bit of money, I got over there as well. And so there I am. We all managed to get over there. So the Brat Pack did do Edinburgh. We did a year. It's 3 months or whatever it is. Feels like 3 months. I think it's only 3 weeks, but it's forever. It's the biggest festival in the world. It's the biggest arts mecca, explosion that could ever happen. And from being there in Edinburgh, as anyone will attest who's been there, particularly during festival time, we all fell in love with the idea of never leaving there. So yeah, I stayed as long as I could, and then after that Brat Pack year, I went straight into doing my first solo time there, I think.
Who else is there at Edinburgh at the same time?
So looking back at that point, the Concords were there, Naked Samoans were there, and worth noting, one year, not only were the Concords there, but Jermaine's other duo was there, which is the Humour Beasts with Taika. So I've got Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement, Brett McKenzie's there, I'm there, and that was the start of really, although Humour Beasts was certainly amusing, and I loved it. I actually went probably more times than anyone else, because I'm such a big fan of the absurd, which it really was. The hit show was Concords right from the start there, and became the comedian's show to go to. So we were all in these hideous tiny cave venues, and they were in cave 1. I was in cave 3, which was the haunted one where you could only fit 12 people in. Yeah, so we would go to the Concord show, which I think was 10:30 at night. So most of the shows you're on kind of like 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, 9. And when you're done your little show to your tiny audience or whatever, you'd sort of start drinking immediately or go and hang out, or you've got passes, so you go and see what's the cool one to go to. So we're all trying to see as many shows as possible. Word got out pretty quickly that the Concords had a cool show, and we're doing these songs, actually great songs that weren't just parodies. They were musically, these two were great, but it was really the banter. And in those days, between songs, they would banter sometimes 10, 15 minutes and be just improvising it for the most part. And it was just their sort of dry, laconic wit that people loved. And then when they did play a song, the song was fantastic. And so I was guilty of certainly being one of the major fans that was always there. And I didn't really know those guys too well. I knew them a little bit from New Zealand. We may have run into each other in the odd festival, maybe one festival here in Auckland or two, and not even as them as the Concords, because I don't remember seeing them performing as Flight of the Concords in New Zealand prior to Edinburgh. Maybe once if I really hark back my memory machine, which doesn't work too well. But Jermaine, I found out later, was certainly a Rhys Darby fan, and he would sit at the back and he'd watched Recently Granted, and he'd seen maybe in Wellington and then in Auckland, he'd seen me do one of my first solo shows, which was Let's Get Physical. A lot of spaghetti leg dancing in that one. And I think, so he was quietly, and he was always, and he always, and still is, a sort of a quiet, shifty character. And I don't think he'll mind me saying that, where you never know whether he's at the back, sort of, but he quietly had admired me in the shadows. And so when we got together in Edinburgh, as in hanging out, he immediately said, look, we've been approached by the BBC to create a pilot for a radio series idea. Do you want to be involved? And I said, well, my schedule's pretty tight here, mate. I've got to rehearse. And my show I was doing at that point, I think, was The Neon Outlaw, which was, look, I've had a lot of helicopter and ski chases in it. I can't. He said, well, look, would love you to play the band manager. Have you played a band manager before? I said, well, no, but I've certainly managed in a few kind of managerial type roles. I could hark back from my military days, and I remember my bosses from the barbecue factory and other jobs. So I think it's sort of an authoritative type role, isn't it? He said, yeah, it's just basically what you do is we have a meeting and you tell us, where we're going to go with our careers. That it's going to be a big deal to be in London, and so we totally just improvised this. And I remember the chap turning up, Will, his name was, from the BBC, with his mini disc player, and we were around at Brett and Jermaine's flat in Edinburgh there, and yeah, he just said, okay, I'm going to start recording. You guys just chat whatever you want to do. And I'm like, what are we doing here? And then I think and Jermaine goes, well, you're the manager, so you start things off. We have a meeting. It's our first band meeting. And so I said, okay, all right, here we are. This is our first meeting. And so it just came naturally to me to do a roll call. And so I said, right, who have we got here? Brett? And he went, present. Jermaine? Yeah, present. I'm here. You can see I'm here. I think he started, straight away into that kind of stuff. And I said, all right, and Brian, because I was Brian Nesbitt. They let me come up with my own name at that point. And so that was what my character was called. And Brian, present. All right, well, we're all here now. Ideas for success. Who's got, and we just completely improvised. We ad-libbed a meeting, and that was the crux of it. That was the first of it. And I remember after we recorded that, then they went and recorded. Will Saunders recorded their live performance, and I also got a chance to go out on stage as this character, Brian Nesbitt, to announce the band. And so I was in cave 1, I was in the bigger cave now, and I'd already moved on from my crappy cave 3, 12 people doing helicopter noises. Now, who was to thunk it? But this is what I should be doing. I should be a character actor and attached to these two clowns. So I went out on stage, and I was such a fan of the band anyway, that it was just in my heart to just be really proud and go out and go, okay, listen up, everybody. And it was a full, by this point, they really had a lot of audience. Listen up, and I just came, I had a suit on, okay, listen up, everyone. And they were thinking, who's this guy? We're here to see the Concords. Hello, everyone, Brian Nesbitt here. You've had a good festival, just sort of talking. You've had a good festival so far, but now it's time for some serious music, okay? So please give it up for a great band from New Zealand, Flight of the Concords, and the big applause. And of course, this was all because, Will was recording that and wanting that to be in the show. And if you listen to the radio series, that's all in there. They're from the pilot. And then also outside, I know I'm raving on, but outside they did a lot of vox pox, a lot of like asking audience members what they thought, and then they came up. He came up to me, Will, with how did you think it went? And I went, I think it went pretty good. There was a few more laughs than I would have expected, but I guess an applause is an applause, because the idea that we had from the beginning was that they're not comedians. That what they do is a genuine musical performance, and the fact that they're absolutely hilarious is just a mistake. So yeah, that was the start of it all.
Let's do a shout out on Rosie.
Yeah.
Rosie's part in the whole comedy industry is the fact that the Green Room was so well conceived and run. But she not only helped you, but also she helped a whole lot of other people. And that you two are quite unique couple in the fact that producer, performer, but
Yeah.
so.
I think Rosie Carnahan was really at the heart of a lot of the progress of New Zealand comedy, because she came out of the Christchurch scene. She owned and ran and booked the Green Room, and then got moved up to the comedy bar, the Classic, here in Auckland, the Premium Comedy Club. She was the professional manager of that, and then from there onwards and upwards into Edinburgh with the Gilded Balloon, and managed the biggest venue, the most popular venue there, which was at that point where Leighton Live was being run, which was notoriously the most dangerous and wonderful and craziest gig in the world. And Rosie was running that. She was kicking drunks out left, right and centre. And from there, she doesn't get enough credit because it's always been in the wings, but she has done this. And then from there, she then got poached yet again down into London to run the Jongleurs comedy clubs, of which at that point, I think there were 17 of them, or 18 clubs. And she was in the head office with 3 or 4 others, booking all of the comics in the UK. And she did that for a number of years, until in fact we had our first child. But then onwards, in fact, she only stopped when I stupidly got a job in America with the Concords. And so, if I hadn't, we'd still be there now. But I mean, and the other difficult thing, you can cut out at any moment there, but yeah, I think that's pretty good, isn't it? Is that all right?
That's good.
Yeah.
That's important. The Brat Pack.
Yeah.
The early Brat Pack, who was that first lineup?
So the Brat Pack original members were Jeremy Elwood, Chris Brain, Terry Frisbee, myself, and Taryn Mahumbai. In later months, we had extension add-ons of Rob Callahan, Mike Boone, and even Benjamin Crellin. But, you don't need to mention those guys.
The importance of finding your group at various points in your career, that, you know, recently granted, then the Brat Pack, kind of, how important are groups in comedy?
I think groups are really important for comedy because you have that hive mind, a group of people who are like-minded and also can bounce off each other. And that's the real heart of it, because it's difficult being very, very funny for longer than a minute or so before someone goes, oh, okay, I get your thing. Oh, you've moved on to the next chap or the next person. A group who can bounce off each other, really make each other laugh, and really make each other corpse is wonderful. And we did it in the Concords a lot during the band meetings, which were usually improvised. That was the most fun part, and that's where the real gold came, because we're trying to outdo each other. We're trying to make each other laugh. And it's that kind of pure enjoyment of what you're doing and what you're saying with your friends that I think, yeah, brings the greatest results. If you can not laugh, which is so hard. I've got a funny little story, just one thing I'll say. With the Concords, Jermaine is a notorious corpser. So he will laugh all the time and laugh loudly. And so during the band meetings, he would crack up quite a lot. He'd also have the most fantastic things to say and really wonderful ideas to make the band meeting even more funny. But he would always laugh. And so on quite a few occasions during the band meetings, they would have to be removed from the band meetings. So it would just be me talking to two empty chairs because he would just be laughing so much. So the director would say, say what you're going to say. Say the stuff you're saying again, please, Rhys, because it's great, but I'm just going to remove the Concords from the room. And I could still hear them down at the Video Village, down the hallway, as I'm talking to two empty chairs about, you know, the agenda or whatever. And I could still hear, like, I can still hear you, I'd yell, and it would be, it's always Jermaine, he's a big laugh. But yeah, that's a real fond memory for me. I think for me it comes down to that obsession with the sketch comedy troupe that I wanted to be in. So when that didn't necessarily happen, I thought as a solo performer, bugger it, I'm just going to do sketches anyway. I'll do them on my own. And so there I was, essentially performing on stage, acting out an entire scene and being the other characters in that scene, and even some of the objects. And so it was it was certainly odd, but yeah, no one else was really doing it. And I like to sort of imagine myself out of my body, up sort of near the ceiling, not amongst the audience, just slightly above them, probably sort of better viewing platform, you know, and looking at me on stage and imagining what that must look like. And that made me really laugh. And so that's how I thought, oh, this will be good. This is what I'll do. And yeah, still to this day, I get that out-of-body experience when I'm prancing about on stage doing a pickpocket routine or whatever I'm doing. Yeah, and that's why I'm one of the few comics, I guess, that doesn't like a handheld mic. I like to have a mic attached to my face so I can move. I like to jump around. I think military humor is very important because of the position these people are in. They're in a very, very serious establishment, and that is really just the perfect recipe for humor. Their life is on the line. Military law, I remember as a soldier, was so important. You're not even in the governmental laws. You're in your own institution. You're under military law. Okay, it's harsher. All right, so if you've got a bit of dirt on your boots, that's it. Your day's over, my friend. You know, you're walking around the parade ground with your pack on, doing Morse code loudly. Normal humans wouldn't have to do that. Well, you will have to because you're under military law. So there was this constant threat of being told off and being in real trouble. And I was really scared as a teenager in the army that if I got caught, and one of the big things was being charged. You have been charged. And it's not, you haven't been charged a few bob. It's not money. You're being charged with a real difficult task now that you have to do till the early hours of the morning with your pack on. And also the other soldiers will look outside their windows of their dorms, and they'll see you parading around like an absolute idiot because you're in trouble, and you'll feel like an idiot. And they're really into sizing you down and really, pulling you apart. And that whole Full Metal Jacket thing, so that I guess it's character building, but it was just really scary. And I think something clicked in for me, and probably for a lot of these soldiers, wartime soldiers, whereby some of the absolute seriousness of what's going on, I think is just so close to the wall of where complete humour is, that it's right up against it. And if you just blow slightly, the wall will fall over and you'll be in hilarious zone. And that's what I liked to do. And I'll hark back to that moment of when we're walking around on the parade ground, marching, I should say, in a big group, and Brenda Cunningham and myself in the middle of the group are holding hands and marching, and there's a point where, hey, halt! Are you two holding hands? No, yes, it's things like that where you just kind of, because if you take it all too seriously, you're not going to enjoy yourself. I mean, it's just, and they are so serious, and I can understand the seriousness of it because, you're training to go to war, to fight for democracy in your country. But we never saw it as that. And a lot of soldiers, I think, and specifically with the war soldiers, they're just told to do it. They're conscripted, and they are forced to go out, and they're given a number, and they are, they're a government number, and there's your weapon, and there's your bullets, and please don't die, and get the bad guys. But really, well, hang on a minute, we've all got crazy senses of humour. I mean, we're from New Zealand. I mean, we're, yes, I'll do that. I like the badges and the hats. But as a group, and you start to get the group mentality, because you find out who else in your squad or your troop likes to have a good laugh, or sees that, hang on, this is all a bit serious, isn't it? And you start to really take the piss out of things. And I think that's where I can see where comedy groups started to fashion themselves in the military, because there's just ridiculous amounts of things to laugh at. I mean, we got taught how to roll our socks up into these balls so they had smiley faces. And they all had to be smiling at you when you opened your drawer, And I remember we had to put not only polish on our boots, but on the soles of our boots, so that they were crisp and clean and absolutely polished on the soles. Now, I did that one day, and I didn't let them dry, and I used those boots to walk then into the mess for lunch, and I didn't know, but behind me, all my footprints, right up to me getting my eggs, and one of the officers came over and says, "Your boots, you've over-cleaned them, haven't you?" And I said, "No, they should be good, they should be good." And he said, "All right, well, I can tell it's you because your footprints are all the way through the front door, and you dickhead." And I remember looking, oh shit, and it's little funny things like that where you go, what am I doing? Why are we polishing the soles of our boots? And thankfully, I didn't have to go to war or even help out with any peacekeeping. But the one thing they said about me was that I was good for morale. And I think that is another really strong thing for humour in the military, is that it's really important for morale. And I think they could get shipped off the next day, or they got shipped off and they lost some of their mates and they returned. But if you haven't got a sense of humour, what have you got? Because you've got so much loss, and you've got so much potential loss about to happen. So let's have a laugh and remember the human spirit, and that's the most important thing. Look, people have been laughing at me my entire life. All through my childhood, people would laugh, and I kind of lapped it up. And did I play on it? Yes, I did. My mum was very funny. My dad was very funny, and it was kind of an important way of communicating. It was, some of the humour was very odd, and sometimes I remember I wouldn't even do anything and people would laugh. It was the way I was staring, or sometimes I was a very shy kid, so I wouldn't talk half the time, and people found that funny. And I remember as an early cadet, the Sergeant Major came up and he said, look, I never hear a peep out of you. You're either very, very smart or a complete idiot. Which one is it? And I just said, Tuesday. So, you know, he knew. I don't know whether that was smart or not, but, you know, I think that's the kind of thing. I don't mind being laughed at because what I see is someone else, and it's not cruel laughter, it's laughter. I see someone having fun and someone being happy, and I've made that happen for them. And now there is a difference when I'm laughed at, and you know, for stuffing up or for when I don't mean to be laughed at, which isn't very often. You know, that can be hurt. That can hurt. That hurts, of course. But I think on the odd occasion when that happened, I just sort of went, well, a laugh's a laugh, and you know, I shan't be returning to this place.